January 26, 2026, 5:19 a.m. Black Sea approaches off Crimea. At first light, Russian High Command was focused far from the Black Sea, convinced that the primary strategic pressure was shifting north as attention centered on Arctic signaling and force movements. In that calculation, Crimea appeared quiet, routine, and temporarily secondary, a place where assets could be thinned without immediate consequence. What Moscow did not see was the gap it had created. By redeploying key air defense and surveillance units away from the southern theater, Russian planners assumed Ukraine lacked both the awareness and the means to exploit the opening before it could be closed again. That assumption collapsed quietly. NATO electronic intelligence aircraft orbiting the Black Sea detected the sudden change in Russian radar behavior almost immediately, registering an absence where constant noise had once existed. The encrypted message passed to Kiev was brief and unambiguous, confirming that the defensive umbrella over Crimea was no longer intact. 5:22 a.m., approximately 20 meters off the Crimean coast. Ukraine answered that signal with silence rather than speed, deploying a single Magura 55C drone riding low in rough water, its profile masked by 6 feet swells and pre-dawn darkness. This was not a suicide run, but a delivery platform, carrying within its hull 4 fiber-optic guided FPV drones intended for a far more precise mission. The Magura navigated using inertial guidance alone, maintaining radio silence to avoid detection, while the operator in Odessa fought drift, current, and wave impact to keep the vessel on course. Each correction was minimal because at sea, even small adjustments can generate signatures that coastal radar complexes are trained to notice. Stealth at sea, however, is never absolute. The Russian Nebo-M coastal radar complex, capable of tracking hypersonic targets out to 250 miles under ideal conditions, registered a subtle anomaly in the wave pattern rather than a clear contact. It was not enough for a lock, but it was enough to trigger concern. A Project 22160 patrol ship guarding the outer perimeter reacted immediately. Without waiting for confirmation, its captain ordered a Ka-27 Helix helicopter into the air, accelerating to roughly 140 knots and deploying RGB NM-1 sonobuoys designed to detect the acoustic signature of small engines operating near the surface. The Ukrainian operator saw the telemetry spike and understood the situation instantly. Standard doctrine would have dictated withdrawal, but retreat would have meant mission failure. So instead, he initiated dive mode, flooding ballast tanks and lowering the Magura until only antennas and camera remained above water. At the same moment, the control system shifted to a mesh network, forcing the signal to hop frequencies roughly 500 times per second. Russian jamming filled the air, but the sea absorbed the rest, and the sonobuoys returned nothing but ocean noise. 5:26 a.m. Harbor approach zone. The Magura slipped through the acoustic and electronic chaos and reached its terminal waypoint, now positioned just meters from the harbor mouth. What appeared to Russian sensors as absence was in fact preparation, as the sea drone held steady in the swell, waiting for the next phase. Inside the hull, mechanical systems armed silently. Hydraulic actuators prepared to deploy, transforming the vessel from an unmanned boat into a launch platform poised to release weapons that would shift the balance inside the harbor before Russian defenses fully understood what was happening. The door was open, and the clock was already running. The transformation happened in seconds. Hydraulic actuators forced the dorsal panels open, revealing a compact launch rail as the Magura 55 completed its final stabilization, turning a low-profile sea drone into a floating deployment platform at the edge of the harbor. One after another, 4 Queen Hornet FP5 FPV drones were catapulted into the air, climbing rapidly to roughly 150 feet as their rotors stabilized against the coastal wind. Trailing behind each drone was a microfilament fiber-optic cable no thicker than a human hair, physically tethering them to the mothership and bypassing every conventional form of radio jamming. Onshore, Russian air defense finally snapped to attention. Inside a Pantsir S-1 vehicle positioned along the coastal berm, the radar operator saw 4 low-altitude contacts bloom across his display, small, fast, and suddenly very real. He reacted without hesitation. A 57E6 interceptor missile launched immediately, accelerating to Mach 3 inches under 2 seconds, intercepting the lead drone at a range of roughly 12 miles and shredding it in a cloud of fragments. The operator switched instantly to electronic warfare. The Krasuka 4 system flooded the spectrum with jamming power strong enough to sever most conventional drone links across the region, and the expectation was simple. The remaining drones should fall out of the sky within moments. They did not, because light cannot be jammed. Through the fiber-optic lines, Ukrainian pilots continued receiving 1080p live video with zero latency, watching the Pantsir battery clearly as it sat exposed against the coastline. 2 drones split hard left and right, executing a coordinated diversion that stretched the fire control radar beyond its ability to maintain a clean track. The Pantsir responded with its 30mm autocannons, tracer fire stitching the sky as shells chased targets that were never meant to survive direct engagement. While the system struggled to resolve the decoys, the 3rd drone dropped to treetop level, skimming just above ground clutter and terrain. It closed the distance rapidly. Ignoring the chaos, the drone drove its 10-pound shaped charge directly into the Pantsir's rotating radar array, shattering the antenna and instantly blinding the system without destroying the vehicle itself. A $15 million air defense unit was reduced to a silent truck in seconds. With the coastal gate effectively opened, the remaining drones passed through uncontested, and the defensive perimeter collapsed inward faster than Russian commanders could process. Inside the harbor, alarms began to stack without context. Operators understood they were under attack, but not where the threat was coming from, how it was controlled, or how to stop it, and that uncertainty spread faster than any weapon. The breach was complete. With the coastal defense blinded, Russian command shifted from structured response to instinctive reaction. The appearance of fiber-optic drones confirmed what they feared most, that the launch platform had to be nearby, stationary, and vulnerable, and that time was now working against them. The base commander ordered immediate pursuit. A Project 2-1980 Grachanok patrol boat, weighing approximately 140 tons and designed specifically for anti-sabotage operations, surged out of the harbor at nearly 30 knots. Its bow cutting hard through the swell as heavy 14.5mm machine guns swung into firing position. For the Magura 55, escape was no longer an option. Maneuvering would risk snapping the delicate fiber-optic tethers that still controlled the remaining drones, turning the mothership into a helpless node locked in place while the patrol boat closed the distance rapidly. The Ukrainian operator faced a binary decision. Saving the platform would doom the mission, but sacrificing one drone could preserve the entire strike package. And in modern warfare, priorities are measured by outcome, not sentiment. He chose sacrifice. One drone broke away from the main attack vector and turned directly toward the incoming patrol boat. The engagement immediately became a contest of physics rather than firepower, with Russian gunners attempting to hit a target roughly the size of a dinner plate moving at nearly 90 miles per hour while riding unstable air over open water. Tracer rounds carved white lines across the sea, splashing harmlessly around the drone as it descended into a vertical attack profile. The shaped charge detonated against the reinforced glass of the patrol boat's command deck, producing an intense overpressure that incapacitated the bridge crew and destroyed navigation systems without sinking the vessel. The patrol boat veered violently to port, rudder jammed and weapons silent. Its mission ended by a weapon that cost a fraction of the ammunition fired at it. The harbor entrance was now effectively undefended. Inside Russian command channels, the situation deteriorated rapidly. With radar assets blinded, patrol elements neutralized, and drones still inbound, commanders authorized escalation measures that would have been unthinkable minutes earlier. A 9M723 Iskander-M tactical ballistic missile launched from an inland airfield approximately 60 miles away, accelerating to Mach 6 as it climbed into the stratosphere. Designed to destroy hardened targets and city-scale infrastructure, it was now being used to hunt a fiberglass boat. The missile impacted the sea with catastrophic force, throwing a water column nearly 200 feet into the air and transmitting shockwaves through the seabed. But the strike achieved nothing, because the Magura 55 had already drifted miles away, its launch roll complete, its fiber-optic lines still intact and transmitting. What followed was not coordinated defense, but electromagnetic chaos. Russian electronic warfare systems surged to maximum output, saturating the spectrum in an attempt to blind everything within range, an action that would normally drop conventional drones instantly. It did not matter. The fiber-optic lines formed a physical tunnel through the interference, delivering uninterrupted 1080p video feeds directly to operators in Odessa, who were now watching the base unravel in real time. On the ground, Russian naval infantry fired AK-12 rifles skyward, spraying tracer fire into the dawn as drones weaved through the barrage. The remaining Pantsir S-1 system rotated helplessly, its radar overwhelmed by ground clutter and unable to establish a firing solution against plastic airframes tethered by glass. The drones ignored the chaos. Their objective was not personnel or vehicles, but the heart of the base. At the end of the pier stood a reinforced concrete hangar, its blast doors left open during the scramble. Intelligence had identified it as the storage and maintenance hub for Russia's own unmanned naval systems, a concentration of explosive material never meant to be exposed. Through the camera feed, Ukrainian operators saw stacks of high-explosive warheads positioned beside unshielded aviation fuel drums. It was a configuration that transformed the facility into a powder keg, waiting only for activation energy. The lead drone aligned its vector precisely and entered the hangar at approximately 60 miles per hour, dropping to just 5 feet above the concrete floor. Distance counters collapsed rapidly, 200 yards, 100 yards, as the camera resolved individual markings on warhead crates and the terrified expressions of mechanics diving for cover. There was no jammer, no interceptor, and no maneuver left. The shaped charge impacted the munition stack at roughly 90 miles per hour, injecting a jet of molten copper at Mach 25 into the core of the stored explosives. The initial blast was small, the chain reaction was not. Stored warheads detonated sympathetically, igniting aviation fuel and generating a thermobaric pressure wave that tore through reinforced steel as if it were paper. The hangar roof, weighing multiple tons, was lifted nearly 300 feet into the air. The explosion visible from Sevastopol as the base disintegrated in seconds. A facility valued at over $100 million ceased to exist. What remained was fire, shock, and the realization that a billion-dollar defense grid had been defeated by innovation measured in thousands, not millions. The collapse was complete. In the minutes following the explosion, the Crimean base ceased to function as a military installation and became a containment problem. Fires burned uncontrolled across the pier, secondary detonations echoed through the wreckage, and command channels filled with fragmented reports that no longer matched any operational map. Russian officers attempted to re-establish perimeter control, but the physical layout of the base no longer existed in usable form. Power was intermittent, internal communications were severed, and surviving units operated in isolation, unsure whether the strike had ended or was only entering another phase. Emergency crews moved cautiously, constrained by heat, debris, and the risk of unexploded ordnance scattered across the harbor. The destruction of the hangar had eliminated not only stored munitions, but also maintenance infrastructure, tooling, and technical personnel concentrated in one location. From a naval perspective, the loss went beyond physical damage. The base had served as a forward hub for unmanned operations in the Black Sea, and its sudden removal created an operational vacuum that could not be filled quickly by relocation alone. Russian air defense commanders initiated immediate posture changes across the region. Remaining Pantsir S-1 units were repositioned, engagement parameters adjusted, and standing orders revised to account for fiber-optic controlled threats that bypass traditional electronic warfare assumptions. These adaptations, however, introduced new vulnerabilities. Systems optimized for low-altitude drone defense sacrificed coverage elsewhere, forcing commanders to accept risk in other domains while trying to plug a hole that had already been exploited. Internally, assessments focused on sequence rather than blame. Analysts reconstructed the engagement step by step, from the initial radar anomaly to the final chain reaction. concluding that the failure was not a single decision, but a cascade triggered by misallocated assets and underestimated adversary innovation. For Ukraine, the absence of immediate, large-scale retaliation was as telling as the strike itself. The operation had crossed a threshold without triggering an escalatory response in the opening hours, suggesting that Russian leadership was prioritizing damage control over retaliation. Information spread faster than official statements could keep pace. Satellite imagery, thermal signatures, and eyewitness footage circulated globally, locking the narrative into place before any alternative framing could emerge. Within strategic circles, the implications became clear. The strike demonstrated that static defenses, no matter how expensive, could be unraveled by systems designed to exploit physics rather than overpower it, and that cost asymmetry now favored those willing to innovate under constraint. As smoke continued to rise from the harbor, Russian planners confronted a reality that could not be repaired with replacement hardware alone. Confidence, once lost, is harder to restore than infrastructure, and the psychological impact of the strike rippled outward through command hierarchies and naval doctrine. The battle was over, but its aftershocks were only beginning. As the fires along the Crimean shoreline settled into controlled burns, the true weight of the operation began to surface. What had unfolded over less than 90 minutes was no longer a tactical episode, but a strategic rupture that forced Russian planners to reconsider assumptions that had held since the beginning of the Black Sea campaign. The destruction of the drone hangar removed more than equipment and munitions. It erased a hub of experimentation, maintenance, and operational confidence that had underpinned Russia's unmanned maritime posture, leaving a gap that could not be closed by moving assets alone. From Moscow's perspective, the strike exposed a form of vulnerability that traditional metrics struggle to quantify. Expensive radars, layered air defenses, and electronic warfare systems had been bypassed, not by overwhelming force, but by sequencing, geometry, and an understanding of where doctrine ended and physics began. For Ukraine, the operation reinforced a strategic pattern that had been forming quietly over months. Rather than chasing parity in hardware, Ukrainian planners continued to exploit asymmetry, using low-cost systems and precise intelligence to force disproportionate effects on far more expensive targets. The economic imbalance was impossible to ignore. A package valued at roughly $250,000 had neutralized infrastructure worth well over $100 million, while also imposing psychological costs that no balance sheet could capture. Beyond the Black Sea, military observers took note. The engagement demonstrated that future conflicts would not be decided solely by missile counts or radar ranges, but by how effectively forces adapt to adversaries who ignore traditional rules and attack the seams between systems. In the days that followed, Russia would adjust. Defenses would be repositioned, procedures rewritten, and new safeguards layered on top of old ones. But adaptation takes time, and time had already been taken away. The message from Kiev was not rhetorical and did not need repetition. Fixed positions are liabilities, electronic dominance is no longer guaranteed, and innovation can arrive from directions that doctrine never anticipated. As smoke drifted away from the ruined harbor, one conclusion remained unavoidable. In modern warfare, the side that controls timing, perception, and asymmetry does not need to win every battle to reshape the war. If you want deeper analysis of modern conflicts, emerging weapons, and the strategies reshaping today's battlefields, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for the next chapter.